December 23, 2024. My phone buzzed during a conference call with our Singapore office. Jordan, we need to talk about New Year's. My brother Marcus's voice carried that particular tone, the one reserved for explaining why I wasn't quite good enough for something. I muted my video. What's up? So, Vanessa and I are hosting this year. Really stepping it up. We rented the penthouse at the Sterling, hired a private chef, the whole thing. He paused. My boss Derek Chin is coming. You know, the regional VP I've been telling you about? The one who's probably promoting me to director next quarter. That's great, Marcus. Congratulations. Right, so here's the thing. Another pause. Maybe you should skip this year. It would be awkward, you know? Derek's bringing his wife, they're super sophisticated. They summer in the Hamptons, winter in Aspen. And when people ask what you do, I kept my voice neutral. What about what I do? Come on, Jordan. You're an administrative coordinator at some government contractor nobody's heard of. No offense, but when everyone else is talking about their careers, their companies, their success, I just don't want the vibe killed. Mom and Dad are fine with it. Actually, Mom suggested it. Of course she did. You work in a cubicle, right? Like basic office work? Filing and scheduling. He didn't wait for an answer. Derek Chin oversees $340 million in cloud infrastructure projects. Vanessa just made partner at her law firm. My college roommate sold his startup for $80 million. Your job would just be embarrassing. Through my office window I could see the Washington Monument. My assistant knocked softly, holding up a folder marked Classified Top Secret. I understand, I said quietly. You're not mad. No, Marcus. Have a great party. You're the best little brother. We'll do something in January, just us. Maybe grab burgers or something low-key. I ended the call and unmuted my video. Apologies, everyone. Where were we on the Malaysian government contract? Let me take you back 3 years to help you understand how we got here. I graduated MIT at 20 with degrees in computer science and electrical engineering. Not because I was some prodigy, I just tested out of prerequisites and took heavy course loads. While Marcus was pledging his fraternity and networking at Mixers, I was building quantum encryption algorithms in the lab. Marcus went to a state school. Good grades, better social life, excellent at managing impressions. After graduation he landed at CloudSync Solutions, worked his way up to senior solutions architect. Made decent money, probably $140,000 base, maybe $180,000 with bonuses. Bought a nice condo. Leased a BMW 5 Series. Mom loved reciting his achievements. Marcus just closed a deal with a Fortune 500 company. Marcus is being considered for director. Marcus takes such good care of Vanessa. They're looking at houses in Bethesda. When I graduated, Mom asked, "So what kind of job are you looking for? Something with good benefits? Maybe government work since you can't really handle corporate pressure." I'd already had 6 offers. Lockheed Martin wanted me for weapons systems. Northrop Grumman offered $180,000 starting for satellite communications. Google wanted me in quantum computing. Instead, I accepted a position at Cipher Dynamics, a defense contractor nobody's heard of because we don't advertise. My title: Administrative Coordinator, Technical Services Division. My actual job: designing unhackable communication systems for people whose names you'll never know. My starting salary: $240,000 base. Plus stock options. My security clearance level: TS/SCI with special compartmented access that meant I couldn't tell my family what I actually did. Or where I actually worked. Or who I actually worked for. Mom saw administrative coordinator and stopped asking questions. Marcus saw government contractor and made assumptions about beige cubicles and GS7 pay scales. Dad saw that I didn't lease a flashy car or wear designer suits and decided I was still figuring things out. I didn't correct them. Partly because my NDA was ironclad. Partly because I was curious how long it would take them to ask real questions. 3 years later I had my answer: they never would. By age 23, I designed the encryption protocol now used by the State Department for classified diplomatic communications. The contract was worth $53 million over 5 years. My bonus alone was $3.2 million. I bought a house. Not in the suburbs. A restored Victorian in Georgetown that I purchased through an LLC. Paid cash. Property records showed DK Holdings LLC as the owner. My family never knew. I drove a 7-year-old Honda Civic. Wore clothes from J.Crew and Uniqlo. Kept my head down. At family dinners, Marcus would talk about his latest deal, his upcoming promotion, his boss Derek who was grooming him for leadership. Mom would ask pointed questions. How much was that contract worth, Marcus? How many people will you supervise as director? Then she'd turn to me. And Jordan still doing, what was it? Administrative work. Coordination, I'd say. Yes. Well, everyone contributes in their own way. Dad would jump in. I heard government contractors have good health care. Probably great for someone who needs stability. Someone who needs stability. Translation. Someone who couldn't cut it in the real world. Last Thanksgiving, Marcus brought Derek Chin to dinner. Derek was exactly what you'd expect. Sharp suit, firm handshake, commanding presence. He'd spent 20 minutes discussing CloudSync's expansion strategy, their new partnership with Microsoft, the innovation pipeline. And you, Jordan? Derek had asked politely. What do you do? I work for a government contractor. Technical coordination. That particular that meant the conversation was over. Important work, I'm sure. Marcus had actually winked at Derek. A wink that said, yeah, my little brother's not quite at our level. I'd excused myself, went to the bathroom and checked my phone. Email from the Director of National Intelligence. Protocol approval confirmed. Deployment to all agencies by Q1. Exceptional work. I'd washed my hands and returned to hear Marcus explaining to Derek why some people are built for entrepreneurship and leadership, others are better suited for supporting roles. December 24th, Christmas Eve. The family gathered at my parents' house in Silver Spring. Marcus arrived in his leased BMW with Vanessa, both dressed like they were attending a yacht club dinner rather than a family holiday. Jordan. Mom hugged me. I'm so glad you understood about New Year's. Marcus explained. He did. It's just, Derek is very important to Marcus's career. And you know how these corporate types are. They judge you by association. Having someone there who's just doing basic administrative work. I understand, Mom. Dad clapped me on the shoulder. Maybe next year you'll have something better to talk about. Have you thought about going back for an MBA? Marcus's connections might be able to help you get into a decent program. Marcus's connections. I had 3 graduate degrees I'd never mentioned. MIT had offered me a full doctorate with funding. I turned it down for the job. Dinner was the Marcus show. His upcoming promotion. The Sterling penthouse rental, $8,500 for one night, which he mentioned twice. The private chef, another $3,000. Derek Chen's importance, mentioned at least 8 times. The guest list, all high achievers naturally. We even hired a professional photographer, Vanessa added. For social media. You know how important personal branding is. I'd nodded along, eating turkey, letting them perform. After dinner, Marcus pulled me aside. You're really okay with skipping New Year's? Absolutely. Because I can feel you being weird about it. I'm not being weird, Marcus. I hope you have a great time. He studied my face. You know what your problem is. You never pushed yourself. You took the safe route, government job, steady paycheck, no ambition. Look at me, I took risks, networked, climbed the ladder. That's the difference between us. I could have told him that the government contractor nobody's heard of had $2.8 billion in active contracts. That my current project was designing the communication infrastructure for a classified satellite network. That my stock options were worth $12 million investing next quarter. Instead I said, you're probably right. He'd smiled, satisfied. I'm telling you this because I care. Maybe the new year is when you finally push yourself. December 31st. While Marcus hosted his party at the Sterling I worked, our Singapore office needed approval on protocol modifications. There was a deadline issue with the Australian Defence Force contract. And I had a board meeting scheduled for January 3rd that needed preparation. Yes, board meeting. Because 2 years ago, Cipher Dynamics had promoted me to Chief Technology Officer. At 23, I became the youngest C-suite executive in the defense contracting sector. My salary jumped to $480,000 base. My total compensation package, including stock and bonuses, was $2.1 million annually. I also joined the board of directors. Not as an observer. As a voting member with equity stake. I hadn't told my family. Partly because of the security clearances, I genuinely couldn't discuss most of my work. Partly because I was conducting an experiment. How long could successful people who claimed to love me remain completely incurious about my actual life? 3 years. The answer was 3 years. At 11:47 p.m. my phone buzzed. Marcus from the party. Happy almost New Year, bro. Sorry you couldn't make it. Derek just said I'm definitely getting director. Best night ever. I texted back. Congratulations. Well deserved. At midnight I toasted with my cat, reviewed the Malaysian contract one more time and went to bed. January 2nd. My assistant Sarah knocked on my office door. Your 2 p.m. is here early. Derek Chin from CloudSync Solutions. I looked up from the classified brief I was reviewing. Derek Chin. Sir. He's your brother's boss, right? He seemed anxious when he saw the board meeting agenda and realized you're the CTO he'd be presenting to. Give me 5 minutes. Offer him coffee. I pulled up CloudSync's file. They were pitching to become our cloud infrastructure vendor. A 3-year contract worth $127 million. Derek Chin was leading the pitch. He'd scheduled this meeting 6 weeks ago, long before Marcus's New Year's party. I checked the materials Derek had submitted. Impressive presentation. Solid technical specs. Competitive pricing. But I'd also done my homework on CloudSync security protocols. There were gaps. Significant ones. Nothing that would matter for a regular commercial client, but for classified defense work? Unacceptable. I buzzed Sarah. Send him in. Derek Chin entered my office with the confidence of a man who'd closed deals with Fortune 500 companies. He wore a $3,000 suit, carried a leather portfolio, extended his hand with a practiced smile. Mr. Kim, thank you for... He stopped. His eyes went from my nameplate, Jordan Kim, Chief Technology Officer, to my face. The color drained from his skin. You're Marcus's brother. I am. I gestured to the chair. Please sit. I've reviewed your proposal. He didn't sit. He stood frozen, processing. The New Year's party, he said slowly. Marcus said his brother worked in. He said you were an administrative coordinator. I got promoted. To CTO. 2 years ago. Derek actually gripped the back of the chair for support. Marcus told me you worked in a cubicle. He said your job was embarrassing. He stopped himself. He said my job would kill the vibe at his party where you were the guest of honor? Derek's face went from pale to red. Mr. Kim, I didn't know. Marcus never mentioned that you were. Why would he? I'm just his little brother who took the safe route. No ambition, remember? I need to sit down. I let him. Poured water from the pitcher on my desk. Waited while he composed himself. Should we discuss your proposal? I asked. Mr. Kim, I'm so sorry. If I'd known that you were. Derek. I used my boardroom voice, the one that made generals listen. The party doesn't matter. Your proposal does. And unfortunately, I've identified 17 critical security vulnerabilities in your infrastructure design that make CloudSync unsuitable for classified defense contracts. His face fell further. 17. I turned my monitor so he could see my notes. Your encryption protocols are industry standard for commercial use. But we're not commercial. We handle communications that, if compromised, could destabilize governments. Your multi-factor authentication is good. Ours needs to be unhackable. Your data segregation is acceptable. We need absolute compartmentalization that your current architecture can't provide. Derek stared at the screen. We could modify. You'd need to rebuild from the ground up. The cost would eliminate your competitive pricing. And honestly, you don't have personnel with the security clearances required to even work on the modifications. He sat back. $127 million contract. Gone. I'm afraid so. Silence filled my office. Through the window, the winter sun glinted off the Potomac. Does Marcus know? Derek finally asked. What you actually do? No. Why not? He never asked. Derek processed this. He talks about you sometimes. Always with this condescension. My little brother's still figuring things out. Some people peak in school but can't handle the real world. We all thought, you were struggling. I know what you thought. Mr. Kim, I need to tell you something. Derek leaned forward. Marcus has been positioning himself for director. Part of his pitch to me was that he comes from a family of high achievers, that success is in his DNA. He specifically contrasted himself with you. Said having a brother who settled for mediocrity made him even more driven to excel. Used me as a cautionary tale. Perfect. He also, Derek continued, looking deeply uncomfortable, told me that he sometimes gives you career advice. Tries to inspire you to aim higher. He did mention an MBA program. Jesus. Derek put his head in his hands. Mr. Kim, Jordan, I'm so sorry. The way he talked about you at dinner at the party in the office. If I'd known you were a C-level executive at one of the most elite defense contractors in the country, you would have what? Treated me differently. I would have stopped him from being so publicly disrespectful to someone who's accomplished more by 23 than most people do in entire careers. I almost felt bad for Derek. He looked genuinely mortified. Here's what's going to happen, I said. I'm rejecting CloudSync's proposal. It's not personal. Your security architecture genuinely doesn't meet our requirements. I'll send you detailed notes on why. Maybe you can use them to improve for other clients. I understand. As for Marcus, that's between me and my family. What happened at your New Year's party, what he said in your office, that's not your responsibility. But the promotion he's expecting, is that based on merit or on assuming he'd bring in this contract? Derek winced. Partly the contract. He's good at his job, but landing Cypher Dynamics was going to be his big win. Proof he could close major deals. Then evaluate him on his actual merit, not on a contract he didn't close. Fair enough. Derek stood. For what it's worth, I think your brother is about to learn a very hard lesson about assumptions. January 3rd, 2 p.m. The quarterly board meeting. Our conference room seated 18. 15 board members, CEO Patricia Winters, CFO James Morton, and me. The room was designed to impress. Panoramic views, technology that cost more than Marcus's annual salary, furniture that whispered power. Patricia called the meeting to order. We'll start with Derek Chen's presentation, then move to contract approvals. Derek entered, saw me sitting at the head of the table in my board seat, and nodded professionally. He'd clearly processed everything overnight. Then Marcus walked in behind him. My brother was carrying Derek's materials, playing assistant. He wore his best suit, had a leather folder, looked ready to impress. He saw the board members. Saw the room. Saw Derek take a seat at the presentation end. Then he saw me. I watched his brain try to process it. His little brother Jordan. Sitting at the board table. In a $4,000 Tom Ford suit I'd bought specifically for board meetings. With a nameplate that read, Jordan Kim, C2 board member. The leather folder slipped from his hands. Marcus. Derek's voice was quiet. Why don't you wait outside? You said I could observe the pitch. You said it would be good experience for. Plans changed. Please wait outside. Marcus didn't move. He was staring at me like I was a hologram that might disappear. Hi Marcus, I said calmly. You work here? I do. You're on the board? I am. Patricia intervened. Mr. Kim, is there a problem? No ma'am. Derek, should we proceed? Derek's presentation was professional despite the circumstances. He acknowledged that CloudSync's current infrastructure didn't meet our security requirements. He thanked us for considering them. He accepted the rejection with grace. Marcus stood against the wall the entire time, face cycling through colors like a malfunctioning traffic light. When Derek finished, Patricia said, "Thank you for your time. Jordan will send detailed technical notes." As they left, Derek put a hand on Marcus's shoulder, guiding him out. My brother looked back at me once, his expression unreadable. The meeting continued. We approved the Malaysian government contract, $340 million over 7 years. Discussed the Australian Defence Force expansion. Reviewed my proposal for a new quantum-resistant encryption protocol that would cost $89 million to develop but could be licensed to allies for potentially $2 billion in revenue. Patricia asked me to stay after. That was your brother? Yes, ma'am. The one who told Derek you were an administrative coordinator? Word traveled fast. He wasn't wrong. I was an administrative coordinator. I just progressed. She smiled slightly. Jordan, you're the youngest CTO in defense contracting. You hold patents on encryption systems used by 14 allied governments. Your work is literally keeping people alive in war zones. And your family thinks you work in a cubicle. They never asked what I actually did. You never told them. No, ma'am. Why not? I thought about it. I wanted to see if they loved me enough to be curious. Turns out the answer was no. Patricia, who'd served as deputy director of the NSA before joining Cipher Dynamics, nodded slowly. My father told me women couldn't handle executive pressure. When I made deputy director, I didn't tell him. I wanted him to ask about my life to show interest. He never did. What happened? He read about my appointment in the Washington Post. Called to congratulate me. I told him congratulations were 15 years too late. My phone started ringing at 4:47 p.m. Marcus, 23 missed calls. Mom, 16 missed calls. Dad, 8 missed calls. Vanessa, 5 missed calls. The voicemails were spectacular. Marcus, what the F you, Jordan? You're a CTO? You're on the board? Do you know what you just did to me? Derek is furious. He thinks I lied about you. Call me back. Mom, Jordan, Marcus is very upset. He says you embarrassed him in front of his boss. Why didn't you tell us about your job? We could have been so proud. Call me immediately. Dad, son, we need to talk about this situation with Marcus. He's saying you sabotaged his career. That can't be true, right? I didn't call back. Instead, I finished my work, had dinner with my actual friends, colleagues who knew exactly what I did and were impressed by it, and went home to my Georgetown house. At 9:30 p.m. my doorbell rang. Marcus stood on my porch, Vanessa behind him. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in 7 hours. We need to talk. I let them in. Vanessa immediately started examining my house. The original woodwork I'd restored, the art I'd collected, the furniture that cost more than her law firm's salary suggested she could afford. How long? Marcus asked. How long what? How long have you been CTO? How long have you lived here? How long have you been, whatever you are? CTO for 2 years. Lived here for 3. Been designing classified communication systems since I graduated MIT. MIT? You went to MIT? I did. Vanessa was looking at a photo on my bookshelf. Me with Patricia Winters and the Secretary of Defense at a White House ceremony. Is that the president? Former president. That was 2 years ago. Marcus sat down heavily. You let us think you were a failure. I let you assume. There's a difference. You never corrected us. Marcus, you never asked. In 3 years you never once said, "Hey Jordan, tell me about your actual work." You saw my title and made assumptions. You decided I was embarrassing. You uninvited me from New Year's because my job would kill the vibe. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. None of you did. It was easier to have a family failure to contrast yourselves against. I was your cautionary tale. Vanessa cut in. This is vindictive. You deliberately made Marcus look bad in front of his boss. No. Derek scheduled that meeting 6 weeks ago to pitch his company for a contract. I reviewed the proposal and rejected it based on technical security requirements that CloudSync cannot meet. That's my job. Marcus being there was coincidence. Bullshit, Marcus snapped. You knew he worked for Derek. You could have warned me, prepared me. Like you warned me before uninviting me from New Year's? Like you prepared me before telling Derek I was embarrassing? He had no answer for that. Here's what's actually happening, I continued. You're upset because your carefully constructed narrative just collapsed. The brother you used to make yourself look ambitious is actually more successful than you'll probably ever be. The job you mocked pays 4 times what you make. The life you assumed was mediocre is extraordinary. And you have to reconcile that with 3 years of condescension. Jordan. I wasn't hiding from you, Marcus. I was watching. Watching to see if anyone in this family loved me enough to ask real questions about my life. To show genuine interest. To treat me like someone worth knowing beyond your assumptions. That's not fair, Vanessa said. You deliberately deceived. I never lied once. Every single time someone asked what I did, I said, technical coordination for a government contractor. That's accurate. I just didn't elaborate because nobody asked me to. Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and went pale. Derek wants to see me tomorrow morning. First thing. Good luck with that. Jordan, please. Can you call him? Tell him this was a misunderstanding? Tell him I didn't know. Why would I do that? Because I'm your brother. Am I? Because brothers usually invite each other to New Year's. Brothers don't call each other embarrassing. Brothers ask about each other's lives. Vanessa stood. This is cruel. You're punishing him for a simple mistake. It wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern. A 3-year pattern of dismissal, condescension, and disinterest. And I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just done pretending it doesn't matter. They left. Marcus looked broken. Vanessa looked furious. I poured a bourbon, Pappy Van Winkle 23 $350 a bottle, and sat in my living room. My phone buzzed. I answered. Jordan Michael Kim, what is going on? Marcus just left here in tears. He said you've been lying to us for years. I haven't lied about anything, Mom. You let us think you were struggling. You let us worry. You never worried, Mom. You were embarrassed. There's a difference. How dare you? Mom, when's the last time you asked me about my day? My work? My life? Not made assumptions, actually asked. Silence. You can't remember because you never did. For 3 years, you've been content to believe I was your disappointing son. It made Marcus look better by comparison. It made you feel like at least one of your children lived up to your standards. That's not true. Then what do I do, Mom? Specifically, what is my job? You work for a government contractor. Administrative work. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Cipher Dynamics. I design encryption systems for the U.S. government and 14 allied nations. I hold 6 patents. I have a TS/SCI security clearance. I make $2.1 million a year. I've briefed the Secretary of Defense personally. I own a $3.7 million house in Georgetown. And none of you knew because none of you cared enough to ask. I could hear her crying. Jordan, please. We didn't know. If you'd just told us. I wanted you to want to know. I wanted you to see me as someone worth knowing. But I was never going to be Marcus. The charming one, the networker, the golden child. So you wrote me off. What do you want from us? Nothing, Mom. I genuinely want nothing. I have colleagues who celebrate my achievements. Friends who ask about my work. A life you know nothing about because you never asked. I'm done auditioning for a family that already decided I wasn't worth the effort. January 4th. Derek fired Marcus. Not for the lost contract, for misrepresenting himself. For using his failure brother as a narrative tool in his self-promotion. For creating an environment where Derek had participated in mocking someone who turned out to be a C-level executive at a company Derek wanted to do business with. It showed catastrophic judgment, Derek told me when he called to apologize again. And it made me complicit in disrespecting you. I can't have someone with that kind of judgment representing Cloud Sync. I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No revenge. Just nothing. Mom called 6 times. Dad called twice. Marcus sent 43 texts ranging from apologetic to furious to desperate. I didn't respond. January 15th. I was offered a position as Chief Innovation Officer at Lockheed Martin. $3.8 million total compensation. Equity stake. A role that would make me one of the most influential people in aerospace defense. I accepted. My letter of resignation from Cipher Dynamics was gracious. Patricia understood. Your family, she asked. What family? March 2025. Mom and Dad showed up at my house. I almost didn't answer the door. But curiosity won. Jordan. Mom looked smaller than I remembered. We've been trying to reach you. I know. Can we come in? I let them in. Dad stayed quiet while Mom talked. We were wrong. About everything. We made assumptions, we didn't ask questions, we took you for granted. You're right. We were proud of Marcus and embarrassed by what we thought was your failure. We're sorry. Okay. Okay? That's it. What else do you want me to say, Mom? We want another chance. We want to be part of your life. We want to know you. I looked at them. These people who'd raised me but never really seen me. Here's the thing about being invisible, I said. You get used to it. You build a life without witnesses. You learn that your achievements matter whether or not they're acknowledged. And eventually, you realize that needing validation from people who've proven they won't give it is a waste of time. So that's it. Dad finally spoke. You're just cutting us off? I'm not cutting you off. You're welcome to read about me in Defense News or Forbes. I'm sure my appointment at Lockheed will make the trades. But a relationship? That requires history, trust, mutual respect. We don't have that. We can build it, Mom insisted. Can we? Or do you just want access to my success now that you know about it? If I'd stayed, just an administrative coordinator, would you be here? Neither answered. That's what I thought. They left. Mom cried. Dad looked angry. I felt nothing. Forbes September 2026 issue, 30 under 30 in enterprise technology. My photo, standing in front of the Lockheed Martin facility where we just successfully tested quantum-resistant satellite communications. The article mentioned I'd pioneered encryption protocols now used by NATO, that I held 14 patents, that at 25 I was the youngest C-suite executive in aerospace defense history. It mentioned I was intensely private, rarely gave interviews, and had revolutionized classified communications with innovations that made previous systems look like children's toys. It didn't mention my family. Because when the reporter asked, I said, I don't have one. Marcus tried to connect on LinkedIn. I declined. Mom sent the Forbes article to distant relatives with a note. So proud of Jordan. I never responded. At my housewarming party, I'd bought a second property in McLean for $4.2 million. My colleagues toasted me. Patricia was there. The Lockheed CEO. 3 senators. The former Secretary of Defense. Someone asked if my family was coming. This is my family, I said, gesturing to the room. The people who saw what I was building and cared enough to be part of it. Later, on my terrace overlooking the Potomac, Patricia asked, any regrets? I thought about Marcus at that board meeting, his face when he realized what I was. Mom crying on the phone. Dad's anger. No, I said. You can't regret cutting out people who were never really there to begin with. Cold, she observed. Honest, I corrected. My phone buzzed. Marcus again from a new number. Mom's sick. Hospital. Thought you should know. I deleted the message. Patricia saw my face. Family. No, I said. Just ghosts. I raised my glass to the people who'd actually shown up. The ones who'd asked questions, celebrated achievements, seen me as someone worth knowing. The people who'd never needed me to prove I was worth their time. My real family.